Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today in this video lecture I'll be dealing with the famous novel Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence. So without any further ado, let's get started with the novel. Today in this particular video lecture I'll be looking at chapter 5 of the novel, which is titled as Paul Launches into Life. Like, as I always say that if a novel is divided into several chapters and each chapter has got its respective title, then from the title itself we must understand that it completely focuses on the content or on the subject matter that is highlighted in the title itself. So here, since the title of the chapter is Paul Launches into Life, so it becomes clear to us that this chapter will completely focus on Paul Morell, his career. So as the chapter opens, we find that Mr. Morel, Paul's father, he encounters an accident in the factory and therefore he is hospitalized. Now the reason becoming a victim of the accident is that Mr. Morel has always been a very careless, heedless man, and in fact he never cared of any danger. So as a result of his carelessness and his desperate nature, he often encountered accidents. So in this particular chapter we find that he is hospitalized because of his accident, and the kind of pain that he suffers, it shows that he feels that he would simply die out of pain. But then, as far as Mrs. Morel is concerned, we know that Mrs. Morel doesn't have any love for Mr. Morel as such. It is only out of her duty that she continues to take care of him. Of course, she feels grieved, she feels sorrowful for the accident that has occurred to him. But still, Mrs. Morel, we find that she cannot have, enough affection for her husband. And in this situation, the accident that takes place in the mine is used by Lawrence to focus on, the dangers of the profession. That people who work in the mine, it is actually a very dangerous place, and any time, if they are not careful enough, they might encounter any kind of accident. So, and that is why, Mrs. Morel has never been, what should I say, like she has never wanted her son to have a life like her husband. And during this time when Mr. Morel was sick, he was hospitalized, we find that the family, the Morel family, do not undergo any financial problems as such, because they used to receive 14 shillings a week from the pit and 10 shillings from the sick club and 5 shillings from the disability fund. And as far as Mrs. Morel is concerned, every week she also earned around 5 or 7 shillings. Now, since we know that Paul Morel suffers from Oedipal threats, and now at this particular point, when he finds that his father is hospitalized, who is the head of the family, the breadwinner of the family, we find that he is indeed happy. And he takes pride, Paul takes much pride in replacing his father in the household. And therefore, he used to say to his mother with joy that I am the man in the house now, as if he is all set to replace his father's position in the household. And now Paul is 14 years old, and we also come across the changes that take place in his appearance, and that youthful chubbiness that he had, he's gradually losing it, and more or less he was becoming, quite similar to William in having rough features. And after this, we find that Paul also suffers from weak health, and therefore after this, he begins. Since he knew some German and French, which he learned, and mathematics as well, which Mr. Heaton had taught him. Now he felt that his education is not being of any commercial value. Therefore, he thinks that now he needs to get a job for himself. But then he is at a loss. He doesn't understand what to do, what he should do now. And so we find that in this chapter we also find that Mrs. Morel makes her son go through several advertisements and look for a job, and finally he comes across an advertisement which offers him a job in Nottingham. And there he goes that in London he could find that he could associate with men far above his best friends in station. So again the shift is towards William. So William writes out a letter of application couched in admirable business language, which Paul copied with variations, because Paul also needs to apply for a job for himself. And then we find that as far as William is concerned, he gets, he kind of seduced, he gets kind of mesmerized by the lavish life that he comes across in London. And therefore, his mother, like Mrs. Morel, gradually became very conscious for him, and she began to, suffer from the feeling as if she was going to lose him forever. And then one day, what happened? He talked a good deal of a girl he had met at a dance, a handsome brunette, quite young, and a lady after whom the men were running thick and fast. I wonder if you would ruin my boy, his mother wrote to him. So now we find that in London, William meets a girl, and her name is Lily, and she is referred to as Gypsy by Paul, because this is what he calls her. And he writes a letter describing Lily's appearance to her mother, describing that how elegant she is in her appearance, that she is tall and she has transparent olive complexions and her hair is as black as jet. So just praising her for her beautiful appearance, he writes a letter to his mother, Mrs. Morel. But as we all know that, and so far we have always seen, as far as Mrs. Morel is concerned, that she has always worried about her son William, and now also we find that she still bears that worrying attitude. And she became more and more anxious, because now when she comes to know that a girl has entered into William's life, she's kind of envious and anxious at the same time, because she again begins to suffer from the fear of losing her son. Okay, so as far as Paul is concerned, we find that Paul was asked to go to visit, the man, Thomas Jordan, who is the manufacturer of surgical appliances. Here I would like to point out that Paul has an aversion to industrialization, because we have seen that Paul is basically interested in painting, and therefore a person who has this artistic quality in him would naturally not be very fond of industrialization. And when he went adorned with, this is actually a factory where stockings, elastic stockings are manufactured. And then we find that since he gets he's called for an interview and visit the Jordan, this company, Mr. Jordan's factory, which is a manufacturer of surgical appliances. So both Paul Morell and Mrs. Morel, they go to Nottingham for Paul's interview. And while they are on the train, they look at each other, and Mrs. Morel smiles at him in a way as if they are on a date. and as if they are on, and they both of them find their journey in the company of each other to be very, very adventurous. So if you look at the line, suddenly their eyes met and she smiled to him, a rare intimate smile, beautiful with brightness and love. Then each looked out of the window. So that's what I said, that both of them felt very happy in the company of each other, as if like lovers, they are on a date. So that this journey seemed to be very adventurous to both of them. And then we come across the factory, the surroundings, that the place was almost like a pit because the surrounding was very dirty, and a clerk took Paul as well as Mrs. Morel to Jordan, to Mr. Jordan, who is the manager of the company. But as this is the surrounding of the factory, which appeared to be dirty, but as far as the inside of the factory is concerned, it was quiet and very homely and clean at the same time. Then we find that Paul is offered a job. He is appointed as a clerk in Jordan, and then Paul, the duty that he has to serve here is he has to copy letters and give orders to women who prepare stockings in the factory. Stockings, in the novel, serve as a very important symbol. So, as I said, he is appointed as a junior spiral clerk, and he would receive 8 shillings a week. But as far as Paul is concerned, Paul did not like, Jordan, this man, much. And then we find that after this, in this chapter, we find that class Mrs. Morel was angry because after the interview gets over, Mrs. Morel and Paul Morel, they go for a dinner, but because of their class, they are kept waiting, and because their orders were not much, their orders were too meager, so she didn't even have the courage to insist that as a visitor of a restaurant, she does have the rights. So here class discrimination is also highlighted because since they are poor, their dinner is also served late and also ignored by the waitress. So, see, they found a place that looked quite cheap, but when Mrs. Morel scanned the bill of fare, her heart was heavy because it was very expensive. Things were so dear. So she ordered kidney pies and potatoes as the cheapest available dish. But after having taken the order, it becomes clear to the waitress, therefore their class, she becomes aware of their class, that they can't afford expensive food items. Therefore, she deliberately kept them waiting for being poor. And here this class discrimination is highlighted. Then we find that as far as Paul is concerned, Paul becomes a bit critical of William, because William had actually promised when he went to London that he would give her £1 every month, but now he has started sending only 10 shillings. So Paul finds that he is being disloyal to the family, and therefore he becomes judgmental, and he says that he made big promises, but it's of little fulfillment because he spends over 50 shillings a week on himself, that is on his own pleasure. And then we see that as far as the woman, that girl is concerned, Gypsy, or her name is Louisa Lily Dennis Weston. William sends a picture of Lily to Mrs. Morel, and there in the picture we find that she has put on a dress which is bare shoulder, and Mrs. Morel immediately expresses her dislike for the girl. She does not like her at all, and she becomes critical of her, and then she we find that she would never praise Lily, because the point is that she becomes jealous of Louisa or Lily. And actually the problem is that Mrs. Morel would never be able, because of her killing suffocating love for her sons, she would never be able to accept any woman in their life, and she always wishes to be the most important woman in William's life. Therefore her dislike for Lily is very natural. And then when William comes to know that this photograph is not liked, is not appreciated by her mother, he sends another photo to Mrs. Morel, where she is seen wearing a black satin gown. I'm sure I ought to be impressed. I wonder if she ever wears anything except evening clothes. So she doesn't again, seem to be very impressed. I think the first one with bare shoulders is lovely. That is the comment that is made by Paul. And then we find that Paul is on his way to his first day of work, and here, like I said, he is taken to the spirals and he translates the letters that contains the orders of stockings which the women who work at the factory, they have to manufacture. As far as the boss, like Mr. Pappleworth, is concerned, he treated Paul as his equal, and he's someone who also helped Paul, in understanding his work. But Mr. Pappleworth is very strict with the women workers, and then we come across that as far as the girls who work at the factory, they are concerned, Paul gradually becomes very popular with them because of his behavior, and since he has that artistic aspect to his nature. And Mr. Jordan is someone we find in this chapter who keeps on exerting or his authority, his dominance over Paul, and that's why Paul doesn't like him much. And then afterwards we find that in this chapter a hunchback woman who is also a factory worker, she's introduced. She's Fanny, and she's also very fond of Paul. So after having long, tiring, hectic days of working at the factory, we find that gradually it takes a toll on Paul's health, and which gradually declined. And we also find that how in this chapter Paul, like I said, he has an aversion to industrialization. He begins to think himself as if he's becoming a prisoner of industrialism, which is described by the visit that is made by Paul and his mother to Nottingham, and the interview as well, which takes place at Jordan's. So basically this chapter focuses on Paul's journey, beginning as a junior clerk in the spiral department of Jordan under Mr. Pappleworth, and then as far as Paul gradually gets to know some of the workers there in the other departments, including Polly, who is an overseer of the factory girl supervisor, and Fanny, the hunchback woman as well, we find that he gradually becomes popular with the women. In fact, when he sings, we find that all the girls, they simply love to see him singing. And Paul's affinity, or let's say Paul's amiability, gradually heightens with these women, because he is found having lunch, dinner with Polly, and he also gets along very well with the girls in the company, because Paul is someone who is adorable, who is found to be very humble and adorable at the same time. And therefore we find that in this chapter, as the title says, that Paul launching into life, so we get to see how his career begins at Jordan as a clerk in the spiral department, and we also come to know his aversion to industrialization. Like, he doesn't much like working at this place. And then another important incident that comes to our notice is the journey that is made by both Mrs. Morel and Paul Morel on their way to Nottingham, where they simply enjoy, the company of each other, and that again shows the intimacy of their relationship, and also highlights on how much Mrs. Morel, feels happy, glad in the company of her son. That is why the smile that she gives to him is described as a rare, intimate smile that is not usually, given by a mother figure. So with this, we come to the end of the chapter. Because thematically we find that these are the important parts in this chapter which touch on Paul's feelings, and also on Mrs. Morel's feelings, and how she enjoys this adventurous journey in the company of her son Paul. So with this, we come to the end of the discussion of this chapter. This chapter, apart from the main focus is on the beginning of Paul's Morel's career at Jordan, and how he reacts to his working at the factory. So I hope you liked the lecture and you were able to understand the significant aspects of this chapter. So if you really find it helpful, do like it, share it, and please do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Until then, bye-bye.